Right.
This is our book too, and ILL it because it retails for $100.
Which is, it's like 87, but
Oh, it's been discounted now. But it's still ILL it. So don't buy it. Unless you want to. I mean, if you guys got money to buy it, I will. Because I think we've made $22 on this book.
oh, come on.
We wrote it for the prestige, and it's so big, right? For the money and the power was not part of it.
Publisher is perfectly happy with how it's performed.
Yes. I get teased. Oh, did they sell another one, Mary? Yeah, we do look ourselves up in WorldCat, sadly.
Like, have some sort of street cred, so. Okay. So the second half of the program is based on the book. It's about making a collection count and how to tell if a collection is performing and how you want it to perform. All right, Mary's favorite.
Physical inventory. This came about, first I come back from some financial accounting things. So inventory to me is like gospel. Why don't people who have an asset check and make sure it's still in shape? Physical inventory is checking your catalog against your physical holdings. That's all it is. I get a shelf list, and I go to the shelf, and do they match? Guess what? They won't. They won't, and you'll be surprised what doesn't. And this came about when Holly and I first started. We had to tame our collection. And I said, I'm going to the shelf all the time. And I'm calling this kind of anecdotal evidence that there's a problem. I'm going to the shelf all the time, and it's never there, or it's not
What I thought it was.
Thought it was. And this was at the time when there were abridged audiobooks versus unabridged, and they were on the wrong records. Yeah, which really annoys audiobook people, by the way, and I'm one of them. So what I said is, it's happening too often. Let's just see if we really have a problem or if this was just fluke. So we did a collection, and we went through and did it. But physical inventory in and of itself is comparing your holdings to the physical items. Make sure they match. That's all it is. And choose a manageable, when you start this, choose a manageable piece. Now everyone thinks, I cannot inventory 70,000 items or whatever it is. No, 250.
Do Section A.
Section A.
That's a start.
And if you have one shelf of Section A, that's all you can manage. Do Section A, one shelf. Think about it in pieces. But make it a little like everything on the shelf I'm going to look and see. And you're going to go one by one and check it off. Is it listed on yours? And see if it matches what the record says.
We started with the reference collection. Wasn't it the reference collection?
The reference collection. We were 45%, I believe, or 50. Didn't exist. Not physically, but it existed in the catalog.
Our theory was that there was an ILS upgrade and that old records
didn't go away.
Came through that shouldn't have.
However, you can see where that could translate into trouble as people are looking in your ILL saying, oh, you've got that. Or patrons are looking at something and you don't have it really. Right. Looks bad.
We then went with the audiobooks. I remember the audiobook part because, A, that's some of our examples, but also audiobooks are expensive. So you want to start with
an expensive collection because that'll have a lot of impact with board members and supervisors.
Yeah.
So that'll help.
Okay.
All right, do it, Jen, real quick. We don't inventory something you're really planning to throw out anyway. You know.
And things that are obvious.
Yeah.
Book about the hippies. In my library, that can go.
So and keep it to your little section that you're worried about. Don't worry about the whole library. Still stay within that little territory you roped off. Do a quick general weight. Okay, there are 4 copies of Cat and Mouse, James Patterson. We don't need 4. We'll keep 1. So keep the best one, throw the rest out. Go through and do that real quick. Now go through and pick out bad conditions, the obvious oldies. Anything that you know, it's no bother keeping around the inventory. If you have a hesitation, keep it on the shelf. You can always choose to go do that later. It's less stress on you, too. Okay, get a shelf list. This is an example of an actual one in mine. And
You're not supposed to be able to read that.
Anybody who wants some sample spreadsheets, I got little things, and we're probably in the next edition of them.
Most ILSs will run you a list of everything in a collection you define, and you can export it to Excel if you want to. You don't even really have to do that these days.
Some of the ILSs will give you just a nice, beautiful report, but I love going into Excel, and Excel thing is pretty. Yes, Excel is like library and fun because I play with the shelf list constantly. That's the reason I carry it in my purse. I might get computer time, and I could just sit there and manipulate it.
This particular report has the title, the author, the call number, the date it was published, the barcode, the date it was added to the collection. So if it's published in 1978 and added to the collection in 2002, the date it was last checked out, its current status, assumed loss, we have some on shelf, and then the total number of circulations for each title. That's what's on this particular report.
Your mileage may vary on your ILS.
Yes.
I'm a Thursday Dynex library, which I have referred to as Satan software.
It says if there's libraries in hell.
Libraries in hell are running this software. And if there's a Thursday Dynex, stay out of the room. I'm really sorry. I know it's not their fault all the way. It's our co-op too, and a lot of bad cataloging makes it bad too. So that's my Thursday Dynex. But I'm learning to live with it. It's an abusive relationship.
My library is.
Do you look at books, like for instance the Hunger Games type of thing? Do you do that?
Yeah.
My library will buy a good 30 copies of that kind of thing.
We'll buy one.
We currently have 30 of Gone Girl.
If I need another one, I'll buy another one. Yep. So this one here is just an example of what it is. And you can see that even this little chart, this is all fiction, JFIC A for right now. I think there might be even a few more, but just to show you can see it on this thing. That's not that many books. It's what, 25, 30?
The weird thing is sometimes you'll see in that call number field J space fic, JF, and the author's, and there's just a variety. Really just pick one and stick with it.
And I don't like that because when I want to organize it by shelf title, it won't do that.
Sort well.
So this is where you're going to have to think about, okay, we really need to develop standards if you see a real wiggly or inconsistent call number. So, all right, identify the errors, fix the errors, find the items, fix their records, inventory them. So all those things on that list, get a cart, pull out what you have, check them off your list, fix the call numbers if you can do a look at it, if that's all it needs. Make sure it's linked to the right record. That happened a lot, especially when you're talking about things before there were lots of formats available. Our old ILS only had like books, paperbacks, and videotape for a while there. And then people were starting to make up stuff to fit it in the catalog. Get rid of that kind of stuff. So fix that all up, and it actually doesn't take as much time as you think. Okay, inventory the remaining items. And all of you should say, hey, what if it's checked out? What I did was create a patron called inventory. And I would specifically item request it. So when it came back in, it was just put on my desk. It took me 2 or 3 minutes to fix it right there, and then I put it back out in circulation. So, you know, nobody really lost time with the book. And I didn't do too many, so it wouldn't be like people were overwhelmed. So 1 or 2 items that can come in on when they're over is easy. I didn't find things, and it wasn't marked missing. I marked it missing if it said the status was here. So you make sure it's correct as you go along. Okay. Sorry I gave it away, Holly. You see this all the time. So yeah, you're going to track down the items that you didn't find. Yeah. Are they lost? Are they missing? Are they just incorrectly shelved, damaged? I found so many things on our damaged shelf that had never been removed or given the status damaged. If they're damaged, mark them damaged so it doesn't get patron frustration.
And if they're marked checked out and you don't find it, that's not a confirmation that it's checked out. You have to look again for when it comes back in to verify that you laid hands on it.
The physical item has to be in your hands. That's kind of, does everybody see what we're talking about here? You just want to verify it, and then you verify it to death. Okay, make a policy on how long to keep the records for items that are not confirmed. I gave missing items 1 year. Okay.
To show up.
To show up. And when I'm starting this project, I kind of even made it a little more just in case. You know, ILSs occasionally won't check out something, or catch it on the patron record and it does show up just magically.
They took it? They didn't check it out?
They took it, they didn't check it out, but they returned it. That happens occasionally. And I then went every 6 months, I look at our missing list and see how many have been sitting there, and then I'll get rid of those records and discard them like they never existed.
If they show back up, you link it again.
Yeah.
No big deal. Half the time you don't want them. They show up and you're like, really? I didn't want it anyway.
Yeah. Set a maintenance schedule for your next inventory in that collection. So you're then now going on. As you're in Cersei Dynamics, there is a module that will inventory it and tell you what date you inventoried it. So if you're thinking way out into the future, last time any person physically inventoried or looked at that item for the reasons of inventory was 2010, and nobody's seen it or done anything for a while. You might want to check up on it. You know, last time it was used or touched. Okay, this is what we all found. I just told you a lot of them. All these are still in active collections, by the way.
This book is hilarious.
It's still in my collection too. It's very popular, but we thought it was hilarious.
What to do when the Russians come?
The Russians come. That is awesome. His name is Robert Conquest, which is the author. So we just thought, once you start actually looking at the items and you're physically laying hands on it, it becomes more real. Like, this looks stupid. It doesn't always give you that kind of feel when you're just looking at a shelf list.
And keeping in mind, again, that we're not talking about the entire building. We're still talking about Fiction A,
Yeah.
you know?
Whatever little piece you pick.
Whatever piece you can manage at the time.
Yeah. And here's the reasons for doing this, and this is why you can tell a lot. Catalog accurately reflects the library holdings. And frankly, that is a big irritation for me. If I'm going to go to the shelf with a patron, I don't want to look stupid in front of them.
And you know, we start
oh, I'm sorry, it's not here.
I don't know where it is.
I don't know where it is. Can you guys see how that would look bad? But then I can have more confidence in my catalog. You will never completely eliminate errors. You can try, but you can at least eliminate the stupid stuff. You know, that constant, the missing items, the incorrect shelving, some of that stuff is always going to happen, but you can at least bring that down to a manageable level.
Sure.
Then this is where you can create a starting point for evaluation.
And evaluating staff as well. If you have someone in charge of a collection, you can evaluate how they've done with their collection.
Yeah.
What is the turnover? You know, how is it circulating? What kind of choices have they made?
What's the average age of this? We have, Holly and I talked about a guy who buys biographies, and he never applies the popular ones because he doesn't like them. All right. I kind of agree on a personal level that you don't need a Paris Hilton biography on his own.
Except that we do, because
but there was a line
asking.
of requests, and he wasn't filling it. Okay. And so our comment is, you know, this is our collection. Even if you vote personally like it, just like you don't get to weed because you personally, you know,
don't like the item.
Don't like the item. You don't get to do that either. It has to fit a criteria that's a little bit, I don't know, a standard.
But you can't evaluate his performance if you can't trust the data that's in your catalog.
Yeah.
So say, what are you talking about? We have 3 copies of that book. Oh.
So don't use that as a measure if the measuring isn't right.
Right.
I like this too because I got a deeper understanding of what it takes to process and put a book on the shelf. Even though I did that as part of my job before I was a librarian, I think you get a sense of, all right, this is the workflow of our department. And I can't expect, you know, we're going to think about why is it coming up? Does somebody need retraining? Is somebody not getting distracted at the wrong time when they're linking? You know, you think about the entire workflow of that back room when you're getting them out, or the pages.
This could be tricky if you're in a situation where there's centralized selection, or, you know, the school district does it for you and they just send you your books. You don't know what their workflow is, you know? It comes to you marked Fiction Smith, and you're like, well, clearly it's not Fiction Smith. You don't know who made that mistake or what their workflow is or how to help them with that situation. That could be a trickier one to do.
Yeah, but it still needs to be done because the catalog.
Ask for a tour. I'm just curious. Just want to see how it works.
Buy somebody coffee, bring donuts.
Take them lunch.
I don't think that's just strategy, food and coffee and stuff. All right. Physical inventory helps maintain a quality collection.
And that means does it circulate enough? Is it used enough? Is it current? Is it relevant? Does it look good?
Does it meet your library mission statement? Is it doing its job?
And also think about the physical organization of the shelving. Do you have a collection that splits in the middle and you can't find the other half because it's on that wall? You know, it's A through F. Now what? Well, G's over there somewhere. That doesn't make sense. So logically organize what's put.
That's part of collection quality too. Is it makes sense where it is?
To non-librarians.
Yeah.
They don't know duty. You know? They don't care. They just want to find it.
I will give you an example. One of our friends who has kind of some weirder building, and it doesn't flow nicely, and she's always been bugged by that because the first thing they see is large print, and everybody thinks that's the regular fiction collection. Oh, yeah. It's a smaller collection, and she goes, oh, no. So she's like, I got to get that out of the first thing people see when they walk into that room is the large print. Because they see all the best-selling titles, but they only think it's, because it's relatively small library. So, so that's kind of what we're talking about. Is it working from a flow purpose too?
And let's think about what the patron sees.
Yes.
Don't forget that as staff, we're looking at the staff clients of the ILS. What does the patron see from the public catalog side of things? Does your staff understand that what they do in the staff side translates to what the patron sees? The patron sees video recording. They don't know that it's disc or VHS. They see a picture that looks like a film strip, right? And they see the word video recording. Maybe they catch this little video disc part. That's what the public sees. Sound recording. Well, what does that mean? It looks like a disc. I'm going to assume that this is an audiobook on 8 sound discs. Is it? Did you accidentally link the playaway to the disc record? It happens. So doing physical inventory defines very clearly what it is, where it is, and that you've done it correctly. And that the patron is going to get what they think they're going to get. This is actually a screenshot from the Michigan e-Library, which is a statewide interlibrary loan system. Well, they pull in records from every possible ILS, every possible kind of library. There's academic libraries and there's public libraries, all kinds of things. So you end up with call numbers that look like this. Well, Ann Arbor calls it YVOCD fiction. Alma calls it T audio CD. What does this mean when the patron is just looking for it? They want to know, is this the thing that I want and can I get it? Status unknown, what does that mean?
Yeah, I want to know that ILS system, please.
Checked out and available. This one's checked out. This one actually gives a due date. So being a statewide system is kind of tricky for them to get data from various systems defined the same way. It's never going to work. Whatever you called it in your call number, that's what everybody else sees. So when you're choosing call numbers, pick things that make sense. Mary has a thing called purgatory. Talk about purgatory. Because people in Mel see that.
Yeah, they see purgatory?
I'm sure of it.
Oh my God, I didn't realize.
What else are they going to do?
I'm in a co-op, and part of the thing is it won't let me discard a record if there's still a fine attached, and I didn't want it in the current collection. Because when I run a shelf list, it would say that it was still there, and only when I looked up that specific book did it give me the, it still says it's in there, but it just sat in the sim box. I won't know that I have it if I just look at the list or don't have it. So I asked them to create a place to put these records so they wouldn't mess up my current stuff that's been verified and is good. And I call it purgatory at home, but it's called resolve in the real world. But until I can resolve that issue, but it takes it out, so its home location will show up as
so it's
resolved,
also not viewing the the other reports you may run.
Yeah, so
the turnover and the average age.
It's called home location. Anybody else see guy next in here?
Yeah.
It's the home location thing. I just changed the home location from fiction.
Are you on Symphony?
Yes.
We're on Horizon.
Okay.
My library's on Horizon. We're moving to Symphony.
We use what we call home location in Thursday Guy Next, and it's where it is the collection it's in. So
and Horizon, it would be the collection code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. but it's where you would look, okay, that's in fiction, or that's in audiobooks. So I've made one called Resolve, and this is probably easy to do in any other aisle. Let's make a new one that doesn't, it's also shadowed in the catalog, but it might show up on that, I guess.
If it's shadowed, then it won't.
Yeah, if it's shadowed, so it won't show up in a current search either. So those are kind of nice workarounds until you can resolve that. I also started throwing people, we had somebody who was stayed in assumed loss status for 10 years.
That boat has sailed, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're not going to see that $10 paperback come back, really. So you got to let go. And if it does come back, how was I relinking it? It's that important to you. But let it go. So when you're looking at a shelf list, you are looking at good stuff. I know that's in the collection. I remember that. It's new. Because if you took an average, including all that stuff that is gone, that's going to give you a skewed data. I could talk about stats all the time, but I know people are starting to glass the start off.
So I have a question about that. So what would a reasonable time for that person that's got the $10 paperback? When do you clear them out?
A
good range of years.
We negotiate. I personally, my accounting person says after a year or so, we're not going to really see it. But people were so panicky in my office, I said 3.
We have a collection agency, and we go by their rules. We have no choice. They say you're going to keep the records for 3 years or something.
Yeah. If it's in collections, that's a different story. I'm talking about. I also, if I knew they hadn't touched it in 10 years, I discharged the book. I discharged
Waived the fine.
Waived the fine. If it's a nickel, who's going to come back and get it? But even if there's 1 cent on it, it will stay in this kind of infinite loop. So I cleaned out that. So when we're looking at our assumed loss, they're in collection like they should be, or we have decided to give up on those people.
And we don't care.
Yeah.
So physical inventory defines who owns it, what is it, where is it, can I get it, not only where is it on the shelf, but where is it in real life. Is it checked out, is it available, is it lost, whatever. More important even is the monetary reasons. Think of all the times that you couldn't find it, you need to have it, so you replace it, and then you find it. So you spent money to replace it, then now you've got 2 copies. That's waste. There's money involved in interlibrary loans. You requested it for someone because you didn't have it. According to your catalog, you don't have it. You do have it. You just linked it wrong. They want unabridged. You only show that you have abridged, or the reverse. Physical inventory is going to save you the money of interlibrary loaning it. Somebody had to take the time to take it off the shelf, package it, put it in the delivery. We pay for delivery. There's costs involved in interlibrary loan. Knowing what you have and where it is and being kind of secure in that data, knowing that what you see really is what it is, saves you money. Everybody likes that.
Before we kind of got on this crusade, because I did more ordering and ILL of adult materials, I knew of one library in our network that was so awful at it. I started doing specific item requests instead of letting it go in a queue, because whenever they showed up, it was always welcome. Always. Yeah. And I won't say their name, but it's around me.
The other thing is, if you're making collection decisions about maybe a waning format, is it time to get rid of those books on tape? You have to be able to trust the data attached to those items. How many do you really still have? How often are they really checked out? You have to be able to trust that data. Physical inventory will make that happen.
Intangible reasons, we've probably already touched on this.
Yep.
Shows vigilance with public assets. And I'll give you an example, because when you go to one of those board meetings, and they don't, you have civilian board meetings. And when I can say 82% of this happened, or our library budget was X, and 70% of that went out in the last year, or things that will give them definition and financial oomph to the presentation. They don't expect that out of librarians. We had 4 story times, and they were so cute. You see the difference when we're
important too, but
if I'm talking about story time, I was going to take on my story time. That was how many kids and all that. But take the cuteness out of it and start really talking about your collection in professional financial terms. It can translate into a lot more respect from your board as well.
The other thing is when you do physical inventory and you go to the shelf and you put your hands on these items, how often do you think, oh, I didn't even know we had this. This is awesome. I'm going to be able to tell people that we have this. I'm going to start, pushing.
So much better at your advisory. You can't even.
Oh, yeah. And how cool do you feel when somebody says, do you have anything about blah, blah, blah? Oh, yeah, I just saw that. It's right over here. And there it is. And you pass it off, and you're like, wow, this is great. Love it. Feel cool.
And
you look smart.
Yeah, you look smart and relevant and helpful. But it's even if you're just starting it, it translates right away into those things. Do you know what I mean? Within a couple of stacks of doing that, you're going to have a better sense of how everything works. So you're going to see payoffs almost right away, even though it doesn't look like you will. It does take time.
We didn't talk about this earlier, but I have to put it in there. A friend of ours works at an area library, was weeding one day, and she had a cart full of stuff she was getting rid of, and a patron asked her, well, what are you doing with all this? What are you doing? She said, I'm selecting for the book sale. And I've always thought that was such a nice way to put it. It's like a positively worded thing. I'm selecting for the book sale.
Yeah.
Love that. Not I'm getting rid of stuff, or it's old.
Yeah.
She phrased it very positively. I have stolen that from her.
So many times. It's worth it, you guys putting in that in your repertoire.
Yeah.
Patron, responses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meat of the matter here.
All right. Let's walk through an example. I know this is kind of the statistical boring part. I will try to make it as fascinating as possible. It's not going to be that way. Unless you're like me. I love this stuff. We started after we had the incident at our library with the reference book being completely screwed up, and half of them didn't exist, and we attributed it to that. Do we have a bigger problem? And I told Hollywood, let's talk about using a collection we know is relatively new, so it doesn't have some of the hangovers from the old migration. We used our audiobook CD collection. At the time, it was relatively new. It was also relatively manageable. I think there were maybe 800 items.
Under 1,000.
Under 1,000 at the time we did the project. So let's just spend one day. And when I mean one day for us, we still did the reference desk. We still did our regular stuff. It's like we have a minute. I'm going to run over there and do stuff. So when I say one day, if you head on there, we're a couple hours.
Yeah.
It probably translates into a couple hours. So we did one. We just wanted the things, inventoried them, compared the spreadsheet. One day's work we found out of a modern collection 5 missing items.
The catalog had them marked missing. Well, we found them. There they are.
One item right on checked out, and I was worried because there was a couple of patrons where that had happened to, and they become really irate.
And it's always the same people. You notice that? You know that is the same people. They think it's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Have you all been part of the library conspiracy? Yeah. We all have a meeting in the back room to talk about that guy who, with his quarter, we're going to ruin him.
Yeah.
But we also found 14 items cataloged as the wrong format. We kind of found out that if there wasn't a record available, they were just using the next best thing.
We should also point out we didn't have catalogers on staff. We had, part-time parapros, minimal training,
They kind of made it up as they went along because no one ever addressed it as an actual issue.
Right. It was a smallish library.
Yeah.
Just link it to whatever.
2 items we could not find. Totally not there. Stolen, lost, discarded.
We don't know, but they weren't there.
We don't know. They weren't there. 50 was confirmed status and location. Now, I like saying that 50, meaning we found 50 that were accurate. All the way down to mark. And that's what you're going to want to focus on the positive. So, but that does translate into this one day's work, an error rate of 45%.
Which now makes you think we need to take this further, right?
Yes. If you had a small error rate. Turns out that when we were done with the whole project, it was much less. But that one day when we were making decisions, is this a worthwhile project? Hell yes, 45%. Sorry to be rough with language, but if you were at my library, it wouldn't be a problem. We go to the back room for that reason. But the error rate was 45%, and this was a relatively new collection. It had only been in existence 2 or 3 years.
Which was part of the problem. There were no records available.
Right away, we created this mess, we couldn't blame it on prior employees, which is always good, by the way.
Right. Own it.
Oh, that was somebody else. But we had to own this one. So when I presented this to the boss, this is the nervous Nellie who was worried about us, getting
ruining
thrown off
civilization or whatever.
the San Francisco thing, we do this kind of stuff, it's going to be bad. So we told her, listen, we reclaimed and confirmed. We get, $65 each.
Audiobooks are expensive.
Yeah. And we told her that this all works out to about $3,000 that we confirmed actually existed in the collection. It also says how much we were fooling around if you multiply the mistakes by equivalent amount. Because even if we found the missing items probably would have showed up, but all of those things checked out could have cost us more down the road, even than the worth of the books. So, anyway, using inventory data to complete. This is, Holly and I love this, because this is after you get all of this kind of chewed in your head a little bit.
I'm going to talk just briefly. So you have a collection development policy that kind of talks about what kind of library you are and what kinds of things you're going to buy, right? Just a general statement, we are popular materials library, we buy materials for children, whatever. It's fairly vague, usually. We at my library have what we call collection management guidelines, and I like the word management because development implies growth, which implies selection. Management works around the life cycle. So I call it a collection management guidelines, which takes it a step further. Yes, we're going to buy books for children, but specifically, we have objectives. We're going to buy picture books aimed at this age group. We're going to buy, nonfiction that supports the curriculum, just general objectives about what it is you plan to buy. So it takes the policy one step further.
And you don't have to share this with the public. This is for the librarians and the staff. You don't give the public too much to think about, okay? That's different.
But your objectives are different from collection to collection. Your board books have a whole different purpose than adult reference, right?
It's time to retire them.
The $4 paperbacks are in a different purpose or a different reason, different audience than adult reference. So you have different objectives for each collection. And from library to library, my adult fiction objectives definitely don't match up with your adult fiction objectives. We're looking to complete series because we have the budget and the space to do it.
Yeah.
You're looking to keep up with the
space. So we had a big argument in my library about the Anne McCaffrey. All of it, and she died too. So people were like, oh. So we have the early ones. They hadn't moved in 20 years.
Literally.
Literally. And I said, yeah, it's breaking up the set, but if we read that, we can ILL some of the
later
stuff.
Yeah.
And
keep the first 3 to get people hooked on the collection or the series. We can guess the other stuff.
Yeah.
Clemens will send them over to you.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'll pay. But you can see where you're going to have to make tough decisions on that. The larger libraries can keep the series intact. We tiny ones, we cannot keep the Anne McCaffrey collection perfect. No matter how nice it is that it's complete, it just might not work. Being complete in and of itself is not an objective. Access to it, that's an objective.
So we have a sample objective.
Yeah, this is
for the audio.
For audiobooks. Popular materials of current interest. Titles with a limited shelf life get a low priority, and that's like a John Kerry Swift book. I'm not buying that at audio at $100. So to have it go, boom, irrelevant right after the election.
We love the president, we hate the president, not happening in audio at $65 when no one cares in February.
The next election, it all starts again. So we did that. I gave consideration and comparison statistics to other things like downloadable employaways or other options. Do we want to buy this particular thing if we have it available in our download collection? So make choices based on, are we covering more of the collection or do we want more copies of the same thing? So kind of keep that in mind. And it's different for every library. Classic fiction and nonfiction titles that coincide with the local school, university curriculum objectives, foreign language, and those things that were taught in school, I know will be used. Example, and nobody believes me when I talk about this. I have a teacher in my local high school who teaches Latin as a club. Kids sign up of their own free will to learn Latin. In droves, 50 kids in the club. So guess what? I got Latin stuff.
In every format possible.
In every format possible, because first off, it's a teen market, and they are impulsive, and they will come in and say, Mr. Green said you had stuff. Yeah, I got stuff. So I can sell it right then and there, especially to teens, so instant gratification. I put priority on that.
We don't do that at Plymouth. Latin?
Yeah, not Latin. I'm the Latin library. I'm the Latin library. I had all the dictionaries. I also asked for him to give me input on what we should buy, because he said certain translations and certain, because he does the Iliad and he wants us to have a translation because he has the kids try that too. So certain translations of some of that old stuff in Latin. Yeah. I'm your girl.
Let's think about health titles in nonfiction. Now, if you have a large community of, I don't know, low vision people. My library has a low vision support group that meets regularly. 30 people once a month show up. They want anything they can get their hands on in audio. So we might actually buy more nonfiction in audio than your average, you know, Mary's Little Library is not going to buy health books.
It goes too out of date, too fast to get the full use out of something that expensive.
So every community and every library has their own objectives for their collections and their community.
We also have a lot of horse books at my library because there are horse farms right around.
Horse capital?
It's the horse capital of Michigan. Yeah, so I got books on dressage and jumping and outfits and the whole 9 yards. But they circulate. How is town? She's got more of a town atmosphere. I don't think they probably have a few token ones. So it really does have to be adjusted to your, and make those audio, the book objectives or any of the collection objectives fit your community.